So March this year was honestly the best month I've ever had in storm chasing. Saw well over a dozen tornadoes. In fact, I believe we saw more than 20 tornadoes together.
So that was a great feeling to just kick off the season with a lot of successes, and then the storms pretty much completely dropped off after that point. We didn't see tornadoes for numerous weeks in a row.
It wasn't even until about the end of the month when I saw some large tornadoes, some actually very photogenic tornadoes out by Lockett, Texas along the Red River.
The Lockett event, which I had to miss due to work, it was one of the few days this year I absolutely could not chase. So I was really frustrated, and the beginning of May was just not putting out any severe weather events whatsoever. I knew at the end of the month, Evan and I were going to be taking a chase trip, which was very exciting. It was the first time I'd done a full 10-day chase trip with nothing to interrupt it in numerous years. But just before that, my dad came out to visit, and my dad and I have been chasing together ever since I was a young kid. And I hadn't seen a tornado with him in a little over a decade. So I was really excited to get the chance to chase with him, introduce him to my friend Evan, and the first day that we went out was May 17th.
So May 17th, we were situated in Southwest Texas. There was a really nice setup with a stalled outflow boundary across the Midland-Odessa area, and there was tons of instability lined up along that boundary and some great turning with height, good wind shear.
Just to our south, we have a pretty obvious dryline bulge intersecting with an outflow boundary. We also have towers going up on the dryline just to our west here, but we're probably gonna drift south. We're waiting for our food here at the Grub Shack, and this is my dad's first storm chase in over 10 years. I also got Evan in the back. We're gonna be heading out here soon. Probably gonna be a pretty good chase day ahead, so we're excited.
We got on a storm that quickly developed, but took a long time to get organized. It kind of would try and get an organized updraft, and then some new areas would go up. So we knew that was the storm that we wanted to be on, and we knew we had to be patient, but there were a lot of other storms in the area that made it kind of tricky, and we got a little scared that we might have chosen the wrong target.
We saw it produce a number of different funnels along both sections of the storm, both to the east side as well as to the west side. We got our first tornado of the day on the westernmost flank of the storm. It was an odd tornado that wasn't really all the way to the ground, but we noticed some dust swirls, and it actually persisted for quite some time, even though the funnel disappeared.
And there's still a little circulation on the ground, but I don't want to miss a actual big tornado because we're playing around with this dinky little thing that's gonna get cut off here soon.
As time went on, the radar presentation was obvious. We had to get further east, and there were limited roads, but we had pretty much a magical road that would keep us right in the notch of the storm, but we had to punch through the backside, which meant we had to go through the big hail. And this wasn't just big hail, this was giant hail.
Oh, there's monsters. Oh, there's the softball from right for its face.
Wow. Very large hail, some of the largest hail that I've actually ever seen in my career. And we just how managed to thread the needle, didn't lose our windshield, and as soon as we got to the area we needed to be, it seemed like the storm was waiting for us, and we saw this awesome wall cloud begin to really rotate pretty heavily. And within a few minutes of seeing that wall cloud, it started developing into this beautiful cone tornado with vortices dancing underneath it.
Wow! I was ecstatic. My dad was getting a fantastic Texas tornado with vortices dancing underneath. Evan and I got out. My dad stayed in the car. He was snapping pictures of the radar with the tornado in the background, and he was loving it.
And it was really cool to see his dad come along and see his face light up as he saw that tornado. You could tell he was sharing the same exact excitement as we were in that situation.
We actually were able to get a secondary intercept on a different highway it quickly wrapped in rain and we sat in the hail core, but just awesome chase day. And it was before our main chase trip even. This was just a one-off day that we ended up getting a big time win on.
So at the end of May, Max and I decided that we were going to get ready to do our first extended chase trip that we have done in a really long time.
We were going to go chase for 10 days straight uninterrupted, which was really exciting. My job does allow me a lot of flexibility, but usually that means going and chasing for a day or two, coming back and working, so on and so forth. And while I'll never complain about that, it's really nice to go for an extended period and not have to worry about anything, just chase every single day.
Got him!
May 22nd was actually looking to be our first really interesting day. There was a stalled boundary across northeastern Colorado. We were thinking that we would go northeast towards the town of Fort Morgan and sit in that general area along the boundary and see how things went. Unfortunately for us, storms fired a little bit earlier and a little bit further to the southwest than we had originally planned. And because of that, we were on the wrong side of the supercell as it formed a tornado near Akron, Colorado.
Well, the problem with that area of Colorado is there's not a ton of roads, and the storm was starting to look like it was becoming tornadic, but in an area that we couldn't see because of its trajectory. So while on most chases we would have had a great view, this chase we were completely SOL. We couldn't see anything. At one point we got a brief glimpse of a rope funnel in the distance, but it was too little too late at that point. To go back and get in front of it was just too long. And by that point, the storm was already done producing. It was a one and done type situation. So not the way we wanted to start the chase trip at all, but we weren't going to give up.
So after the frustrations that we faced on the 22nd, we really knew that we had to make up for it in a big way. Tornadoes this day seemed like they were going to happen in the same general area as the day before.
We were getting excited when supercells started developing to our southwest. They took a long time to get organized. We kind of just gave them some room to breathe, and eventually, once we got closer to the town of Lyman, things started to get a little more interesting.
It began to get a little bit more of a supercellular characteristic, and it looked like it was going to do it. It kind of struggled for a while and was cycling in and out of inflow dominance to outflow dominance.
And finally, it started looking pretty good. We went on this really bad road that just wasn't really even a road. It kind of just turned into a field at one point.
This is so bad. What are we doing, guys?
This is a road.
Evan did a great job driving and keeping us on track because the storm finally did start to produce a tornado at that point just southwest of Akron there.
Go ahead and stop. That's trying to come down.
No! You see it coming down right there? We continued following the storm. It had a very impressive signature on radar and probably had intermittent vortices under this big broad circulation, but we were in a conga line of chasers and just couldn't really see too well, and that was pretty much it for the day. But we were happy to be on the board. We got our tornado and it was time to go back and celebrate in Goodland.
So on May 24th, we woke up in the morning and checked visible satellite, and we thought it was the most obvious meteorological play that we could possibly make. There was a strong, very obvious boundary that was placed around Scott City, Kansas, and we thought that was going to be the focal point for storm development as well as tornado interaction as the storms interacted with the front.
We woke up late that morning because we knew we could. We only had to go about 30 miles south, and we broke out into a very nice looking sky. We'd been in fog all morning, and we thought there's no way anything to the north is going to produce, even though there was a secondary outflow boundary. And we got on a storm that quickly started showing supercellular characteristics. It would try to wrap up, and then it would just kind of not really do much with it. And it kept doing that over and over again.
We noticed that there were supercells up north on the second outflow boundary, which we didn't think would produce, that were getting a very interesting look. Sure enough, Those storms actually ended up being prolific tornado producers, while sticking to our guns on the south we expected would be the good play, unfortunately was not.
We had multiple times where we said, we can leave this storm and go to these northern storms and be on them relatively quickly, but we just never wanted to pull the trigger. We wanted to stay on our storm because that had done us well the day before.
We got frustrated about halfway through the day and ended up dropping south towards Garden City, Kansas, where there was another supercell that was forming, and it looked like it was about ready to produce tornadoes. We got underneath that storm, and it really attempted. It was wrapping very hard.
We had a lot of little spin-ups, kind of, whether they were tornadic or just kind of gustnadoes on the inflow of the storm. You know, you be the judge. Not something that we're really gonna get too excited about. We followed that storm to the east and decided to let it go once it got dark. We knew that we had a down day the next day and it was time to recoup and get ready for what looked to be the biggest day of our chase trip.
May 26 was looking to be a very large day. The Storm Prediction Center had issued a moderate risk for both very large hail as well as potential strong tornadoes across western Kansas. We woke up that morning near Colby, woke up, saw an anvil cloud going over our hotel and thought, that's kind of interesting. We took one look at radar and saw that there was an awesome supercell thunderstorm just to the west of Colby.
So after that morning supercell, we had a couple decisions to make. We thought that there were going to be storms later in the day on the dry line in west central Kansas, but that probably wasn't going to happen until later in the evening. We saw a bunch of towers going up along the warm front to our east about an hour and a half, and we thought we might be able to make it east to this storm, which will probably produce a tornado, and still have plenty of time to get back west in order to see what we thought would be the main show later that evening. And that's exactly what we did. We hauled butt down Interstate 70 all the way to Hayes, and this storm just waited for us. It had multiple cycles. We thought, oh man, we're gonna miss a tornado, but hopefully it cycles, we'll catch the next one. We got so lucky in the sense that it waited to produce until we were right there on it.
We wouldn't even know.
Oh, power flashes.
All right, I saw that. I saw that. I recorded my eyes. Tornado on the ground.
Big tornado in there. That whole thing's a tornado.
Yeah, no doubt.
That's a big stovepipe.
Sure.
Huge
We're gonna
cone.
get north. Where it's gonna be. Oh yeah. Oh, I can see the right end very well.
Nice tripoded shot, completely day made. We were very excited, and we knew that we still probably had a few hours of chasing left to go.
So we ended up going west towards this town of Scott City, where we set up, and we were hoping the big game was going to happen. Unfortunately for lots of chasers in western Kansas, that big game never really arrived, and a lot of people blue sky busted that afternoon. We decided to be tenacious, and instead of waiting on the southern end of the storm system, we ended up driving north towards the warm front, where we were greeted by beautiful supercells near sunset in the northern part of Kansas.
So after another down day, we were back out chasing. We'd gotten to sleep in our own beds in Norman, and we left out of Norman that morning really early.
And we ended up blasting west towards the town of Roswell, New Mexico. We were hoping to see some spaceships in Roswell.
We're here on a supercell northwest of Roswell, New Mexico. Got a nice big old base off to our west. It's had a few attempts at a lowering even, so we're in good position. We also have this little guy up to our south, which is looking pretty cool. And lots of positive lightning strikes out here, so we're just gonna hang tight for now.
As we headed southeast, the storm began to strengthen, and while it strengthened, it ended up engulfing the whole entire area with huge plumes of dust that it was sucking directly into the updraft. It was a sight that I had never really seen before and was really interesting to experience.
And got on a perfect road that got us right out in front of the storm as it was at its strongest. The storm had a beautiful pancake structure. We were just ecstatic over that, and then I noticed a little area that was kind of in the middle, right where the RFD was swinging around and meeting with the forward flank. It kind of caught me off guard, and I started snapping photos of it, and sure enough, there was a rain-wrapped tornado tucked back in there.
After we saw that tornado, the supercell started going outflow dominant and sended off a gust front to the southwest. At that point, we knew the day was over and it was time to head towards the Lubbock area where we could get a hotel for the evening in preparation for the next chase day. So the following day, May 29th, we ended up going north out of Amarillo and starting our day near Springfield, Colorado, where we expected some supercells to form off to our southwest.
It was a pretty classic day in southeastern Colorado. You had some boundaries setting up where the southeasterly winds wrap around the terrain of the Raton Mesa there, and that was going to be our focal point for initiation. We went ahead and just kind of sat in Springfield most of the day, chatted with some storm chasers before heading west just in case there were any land spouts during that initial development period. We sat in the same spot for hours just watching it kind of cycle, extremely high base, not much tornado potential, but we knew later in the evening when the better moisture arrived and the wind profiles improved that we might have some tornado potential.
We actually made a mistake. Once the storm started to get its act together, we had to head back to Springfield to get a little food and also to fill up on gasoline. As soon as we stepped out of the gas station with our food and our gasoline, we realized, oh man, we might have messed up because the storm was looking incredible and it looked like a tornado was imminent. Once we got south out of Springfield, we ended up heading west on dirt roads.
The tornado came into view and it was a cone tucked kind of back in the rain. We got some nice video from the car as it turned into a big fat cone wrapping itself in the rain, and then we got to sit in a spot just before we got into the canyon areas and get some tripoded video. The tornado was still likely on the ground at this point, but it was really buried back in the rain.
As we followed the storm south on some more even crazier canyon roads, we saw some of the most incredible supercell structure in a really unique area along the Rita Blanca grasslands and the Black Mesa area. It was like something I've never seen before. It was an incredible spaceship of a storm just in the middle out of cowboy country, and it seemed absolutely surreal.
We stayed that night in Guyman, Oklahoma, and met up with some of our friends, talking about the day, talking about the following day, and we really weren't sure what we were going to do. May 30th was a tricky forecast because there just was no clearly evident area that we thought would be good for chasing. We decided that we would just kind of meander southwest towards Interstate 40 because we'd have a bunch of options to go west, south, north, whatever we needed. We sat there pretty much all day at a gas station.
We sat and sat and sat, and all day storm struggled to fire. We were about ready to head home until we saw a big supercell forming actually in the same area where we saw tornadoes the night before in southeastern Colorado. That storm ended up persisting and producing a number of different tornadoes, but we were telling ourselves, I don't know if we would make it in time.
Now, we weren't sure if we were going to be able to make it to the storm that was producing the tornado at that time, but there were some other updrafts starting to go up to its south, and we thought, hey, maybe we'll get another storm that'll take advantage of the helicity on the boundary. And that's exactly what happened. Once we got near Dalhart, a storm had been going up right in front of our eyes and quickly became tornadic. I was still kind of thinking we might go to the northern storm, but Evan was watching the storm just to our east like a hawk and basically told me, no, this thing is about to do it. So we stopped, and no sooner than I pressed the brake pedal, a brief tornado came down, and we're like, okay, game on. We found a road that took us east. It was a muddy road, but for the most part, it was pretty manageable for a while. We got to one point though where it just became way too slick to continue, and this was right, of course, as the tornado was dropping down.
Hi, yes, I'd like to report a large tornado on the ground north of Chamberlain. It's a large cone tornado with satellite subvortices forming around it. It doesn't look the strongest, but it is pretty large, tracking to the northeast here.
Okay,
Correct. Yes, sir. On that supercell just north of Chamberlain. It's been on the ground for about 2 or 3 minutes and looks like it's getting larger and gaining strength.
Okay. Tornado on the ground.
Correct.
Touchdown at 2:13. Remains on the ground and is increasing in intensity inside.
Correct. That is correct. Yes, sir. All right. Thank you very much, sir. Have a good day. Trying to get to this tornado. However, the road is absolutely terrible. There's no way we can get close to it except for turning around and going back. Really unfortunate situation
Just
here.
gotta take the view we've got.
Yeah. You gentlemen stay safe. We're gonna head back to the highway there.
Let's just watch it here for a quick
Watch it.
second.
Okay.
I mean, I guess
Yeah,
we
look at
got
this,
the
dude.
same.
This was finally what felt like the icing on the cake for our trip. After that first very photogenic tornado, the storm actually continued to produce tornadoes along its path near the town of Stratford, Texas. We saw a few of them. They were all kind of low contrast and grungy, but we were very much so on cloud nine after seeing that photogenic tornado that I believe not many other chasers saw that day. And that felt like the best prize of all for our entire chase trip.
Another big vortex, or vortex rather.
So overall, the chase trip was an absolute success. We missed a few tornadoes, but we saw the majority of the ones that touched down during that period, so no complaints there whatsoever. It's always a blast just getting out that time of the year and having to not worry about any external factors. We just got to deal with Mother Nature and what was presented to us each day.
It seems like all of our friends and storm chasing family are out. So not only is it great just to be out on the open road, even if you see nothing, you're out on the road, you're in the best part of the country, and you're surrounded by people that you know and love. I can't get enough of that, and I can't wait for the 2022 storm chase season.